better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll those dice.
Woo! We're number one. We're number one. Howdy, Rob.
Howdy, Matt.
Welcome to Dungeon Master of None. We're fans. We're
Where
fans
we
of
are
the show.
fans.
I'm a fan of you.
That's right. We're a fan of you. You're fans of us. We're all fans here, everyone. None of us are stans. We'll talk about that later. That's a problem. But no, we're fans. We enjoy things. We are part of a fandom, even. Probably not. Maybe not. But it's good to be a fan of things. It's good to be enthusiastic, Matt.
FanDuel is sponsoring this episode as a special thing because we're talking about how to be a fan of your players. And your characters, your player characters.
Say that.
Sorry.
Players,
yeah.
How to be a fan of your players and your player characters. No.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah. Someone's gonna hear that and think we're serious. Yeah. But this is I think a
Listen, put in the code DM of None 25 to get your first free $50 on a 3-way parlay. You can bet on will Boromir take the ring from Frodo. I've got that. That Faramir is going to capture Frodo, but let him go. Got great odds on that.
Great odds.
And then basically my last one is what kind of disguise Frodo's going to wear in Mordor. I'm going to say orc, but it could be Nazgul.
Could be anything.
Elf. So I'll see if I hit all three of those in my fantasy FanDuel.
The first actual play to allow real-time gambling prop bets on what happens in the campaign is going to revolutionize the space. No. I actually hate myself for putting that into the world. Don't anybody do that.
Don't do that.
But it would be funny if I were an evil person. That is exactly what I would do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about being a fan in a less problematic way, man.
FanDuel on the Adepticon Warhammer 40K open tournament. I'm like, that actually might happen.
That I'm surprised it hasn't yet.
I've got Drukhari all the way to the top. Oh no.
What does it mean? Let's talk about this. What does it mean to be a fan of your players, of your player characters? Where does this idea come from, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, so I think this idea is as old as essentially role-playing games, if not older. There's this idea that the original game masters of big war games were these impartial referees and stuff like that, interpreting the orders to units as neutral as possible, and based on some of the descriptions of people playing these games and magazines and stuff like that, I don't think that was the case all of the time. People are like, oh, that's really cool, your general is came up with this brilliant plan, it's going to be awesome. And so this is something that's always, I think, been with role-playing games. In the latest 2 generations of system design has been maybe more formalized, but it essentially means hey, as the referee, as the game master, be your player characters are cool and I want them to do interesting things. And when they succeed, I'm going to support that. And we'll talk about some of the different ways that you support that.
This is a good point, Matt, because if you read a lot of the early writing or the early fanzines, you read your Dragon magazine, you get the impression, and I think it is a cultivated one from a lot of the DMs writing in those, that they consider it an adversarial position, that they are sort of in competition or trying to challenge their players. But I think if we read between the lines, I don't actually think that's entirely the case. I think that's an image that a lot of them wanted to project, because like Matt said, a lot of things emerged in early Dungeons and Dragons because a player wanted to do it and the DM was like, that's cool. Yeah, you can do that. I think there's arguments to be made that rangers and clerics exist because a player was like, I want to do this, and someone's like, fine, that's cool. You can do that. And this is, I think, a good instinct, is if your player comes up with a cool idea or wants to do something neat, your first impulse should be, yeah, let's make that work. And I think it is. I think it is, even though the story that often is told about early play is that either your DM is impartial or even like adversarial, trying to challenge you.
Yeah, being a fan of the player characters, I think is one way to look at it is it's the opposite of have an adversarial relationship with the player characters. Because even the people who gave advice of like, you're out to make the most challenging dungeon so that players have to be like on a knife's edge at all times between success. It even like the most extreme advice in printed material in the early days wasn't like rig the game against them. It was like make it challenging for them. And this is just sort of the other side of the coin. It's not saying just make them succeed all the time and no tension.
Right.
It's like set things up in a way where the players feel celebrated and you are excited to celebrate them when they succeed or like when they fail. To have the attitude of we're here to tell a cool story, and when you do those cool story moments, I'm going to celebrate and shower you with accolades.
Yeah, I mean, being a fan means that you want everybody to have fun, right? And there are lots of different ways to have fun in a role-playing game, and it doesn't always mean either you get everything you want or only terrible things happen to you. Like a good principle is that something interesting happens, right? Like that's I think like what being a fan feels like to me. I mean, I think about this with books and movies and TV. Like I don't always want the characters I'm interested in and invested in to always succeed on everything. Sometimes that's fun, but like I want interesting things to happen to them. I don't want them to suffer unnecessarily, but I don't want them to not ever suffer. Just like I'm a fan. I'm interested in their journey and their progression and their development, and that means that something happens that's notable and compelling and dramatic.
Dramatic, yeah. Even it's also like this is not necessarily in opposition to the game master's role to be some kind of neutral arbiter of rules and rulings, right? It could sway you at some times, but I think you could absolutely take the approach of like, I'm completely neutral when I'm doing rulings. However, when you succeed or the scenarios I lay out are creating opportunities for you to celebrate and find joy in the story of your characters and for everyone else to find that same joy. It's kind of like a whole table attitude in a sense. Even though it's directed, this advice is usually directed at the game master. It's like, oh, we're all going to celebrate the successes and failures that happen in this story because our characters
and
are
I think this
cool or interesting or something. Yeah.
We talked about this. There's also a table and a player element of this that we've talked about before and talked about ages ago. One of the things that I think people like about, especially like Critical Role, for example, but all the best actual plays, is that at the table, there's a generosity of play, right? They're always setting each other up to do something cool or like tossing the sort of initiative, the figurative initiative here, the ball to somebody else to be like, oh, your character is interested in this or good at this. What do you have to say? What do you want to do? This is something we like to encourage at the table, but it's part of your players should be a fan of each other and you should be a fan of your players. It is very much a mindset shift, though.
Yeah, this is mindset advice. It's a mindset podcast
that's right.
now.
Listen, that's right.
The fan mindset will allow you. Yeah, no, but it's true though.
Grindset, really.
Grindset, yeah.
But there's also mechanical elements to it, and a well-designed system will give you the tools through rolling dice or through what's on the character sheet to be a fan of your players. Some of the systems that we are not as enthusiastic about don't do a good job of this. Don't always. The roles often end up being a mood killer or making this is why I personally
Wash.
I hate nothing happens. Of all the like outcomes on a roll, nothing happens is the least interesting and most frustrating from like a character standpoint. If this is one of the things that I'm always talking about, what I love about Mothership is that when you fail, you gain stress, which is just like ratcheting up the tension meter. And that even though that's like universally bad, like not only did you fail, but like you're going to fail worse in the future, that feels a little bit more interesting. Everybody needs to be on board with playing a tense space horror game, but because everybody is, it's a really great mechanic for, in this sense, being a fan of your players. You are being a fan of them moving toward an outcome where something really bad happens to their character, but that's the game that everybody's playing.
Excellent advice. And let's get to where this advice came from. So I searched through role-playing game history to try and find the first time this advice was given in like a printed game system. And unsurprisingly, it comes from Apocalypse World by D. Vincent and Meguey Baker. Yeah, this whole section is just like, here are your like GM first principles when playing the game, right? And there's a list of them, and one of them is be a fan of the player's characters. Make the characters' lives not boring does not always mean always worse. Sometimes worse, sure, of course. Always, definitely not. The worst.
We just talked about this. This is. I think if you are just starting to sort of shift your mindset here, the key principle for you is make your player characters' lives not boring. And there's lots of ways to go about that. That does not necessarily mean punish them. That's why a lot of the systems we talk about complications when you fail, not like punishments or consequences.
I love the use of the sort of negative here, not boring, as opposed to interesting. It has a slightly different connotation, which is just like, hey, if the outcome you're thinking of for the story, the scene, the moment is kind of a boring one, then maybe that's not the one you want to use if you have another option available. And again, of course, doesn't mean always just punishing people.
This is why the Bakers are smarter and better designers than me. I said interesting, but not boring is better. Like Matt said, that just means that's easier for you as the GM to think of, like, is this outcome boring? Not is the thing I haven't planned interesting, just like, would this be boring? Is a lot easier of a question for you to answer than, is this interesting?
Continuing. The worst way there is to make a character's life more interesting is to take away the things that make the character cool to begin with. The Gunlugger's guns, but also the Gunlugger's collection of ancient photographs. What makes the character match our expectations, and also what makes the character rise above them. Don't take those away.
This is such good advice, and we've talked about this a lot previously in other contexts, but a rookie GM mistake is when something bad happens, when there is a consequence or a failure, is to break or remove or whatever some object or tool or aspect of a player's character. There are ways to add complications to that, but it is boring and unfun to take away, especially if it's like a core part of a player's character. You know, this is why when I'm running 5e or a D&D campaign, one of the things that I really dislike is this. I really hate those critical fail tables. You know, when you break your sword, you drop your sword. You know, something bad happens. Like you already rolled a 1. Like it's even worse to take more away. And it's why something like dominate or paralyze or hold person can be really like unpleasant at the table. There are not boring ways to like accomplish similar effects.
I think one way to think about it is to, once you have your list, everyone's rolled up their player characters, and this can change throughout the campaign, is to have a couple word descriptors of what is the core interesting, not boring identity of these characters. And that's like what you maybe I'm not saying you don't fuck with that, but like you don't deny them the opportunity to at least overcome adversity in those areas, right?
Right.
At least not all the time, right? Don't take away the gunlugger's guns. Okay, here's continuing on. The other worst way to deny the character's success when the character fought for it and won it. Always give the characters what they work for. No, the way to make a character's success interesting is to make it consequential. When a character accomplishes something, have all your NPCs respond. Reevaluate those PC triangles you've been creating. Whose needs change? Whose opinions change? Who was an enemy but now is afraid? Who was an enemy but now sees better opportunities as an ally? Let the character's successes make waves outward. Let them topple the already unstable situation. There are no status quos in Apocalypse World. Even life doesn't always suck.
This is also great advice. And this is where having just some very simple motivations or key phrases attached to your NPCs so you can realistically understand how they might respond to major quest events or changes to the world is really helpful. Even if it's bad, even if the players do something and it turns out that pissed off one of their key allies or friends, that's interesting, and players respond positively to that, in my experience. Like, they may be frustrated, but they're like, oh, well, that's not what I wanted to happen, but that's not boring, you know?
Yeah, I think this is like back to some more fundamental advice, is that when players, either one or more, or player characters try and achieve or accomplish something and they succeed, as a GM, what's your like fundamental way to show that you are a fan of that task, of that story beat? It's to show its consequences, right? And those don't have to be positive consequences. They can be negative consequences. But when we have characters that we're fans of, when they do things, they matter, right? Other things change. The world changes and reacts. And that's, this is back to your fundamental task as a game master. It's like players are showing you that they want this accomplished. So you have to show the consequences of their actions in order for any of the other advice to follow through. You have to show that the world changed because they did something, because they took this opinion, this stance, because they killed this NPC, because they made this alliance. You have to show its consequences. That's being a fan of your player characters.
And the consequences don't have to be huge. They can actually be quite small. They can be very like little interpersonal things. It's important to show those consequences. This is I think one of the most critical tasks that you have as a game master, and it can be difficult because there's not there's not necessarily a mechanism for this in a lot of games. But I think if you can master this, if you can start to think just one or two steps out from the consequences of the the player character's actions, this makes the world feel real, and it makes them feel like their decisions and their actions matter, which is exactly like Matt said. This is what it means to be a fan of your characters.
So it's interesting to see how this advice has changed over the last half and full generation of game design. Here's a next quote from a different rulebook. This is from a game called Dungeon World. Be a fan, though many powered by the Apocalypse systems have very, very similar GM directives. Quoting now, be a fan of the characters. Think of the player characters as protagonists in a story you might see on TV. Cheer for their victories and lament their defeats. You're not here to push them in any particular direction, merely to participate in fiction that features them and their action.
I mean, this is precisely how you want to think about it. You're cheering for their victories and lamenting their defeats. They will have both. Both are interesting, are both not boring, right? And that's what it means to be a fan.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Dungeon World switches from really what was originally an Apocalypse World, which is mostly advice about the consequences of the story. To be a fan, you have to show that the player's actions that they've struggled for can happen and that they should have consequences. And you've got to show those consequences. To this advice, which is a little more about like attitude, right? Like celebrating when they succeed, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't, and I think if you combine the two, it's like, well, when they succeed, how do you celebrate it? You show them the rewards or the things that have changed that they mostly wanted to see in the world. And when they fail, you show them how things change in ways that are maybe not what they wanted.
I do think the emphasis is different, but I think these two work well together. I think that if you use the advice from Dungeon World and from Apocalypse World, that this is a good framework for thinking about how to be a fan, how to approach your player characters' actions, and to make that feel good. I mean, this is the sort of juicy center of this is you want your players to feel good about like what they're doing in the game. That doesn't mean give them everything they want. It doesn't mean reward them every time, but it does mean that it should feel meaningful. It should feel like they have agency, right? Like that's a big part of like what. And when to the Dungeon World example, like when you see that on TV, you see the characters. They succeed, they fail, but like they're acting on the world and seeing their impact, and that's what's interesting. And that this is the same sort of idea that you're trying to achieve as a game master.
Right. It's like when you're showing the good or ill consequences of their actions, you can imagine framing the table, right? Like a TV show or a movie, right? When things are happening that are good, the way the camera frames the scene and moves and the soundtrack, they all change in subtle ways to let us know this was a triumphant moment. And then when it fails, right, those same sort of audio-visual clues happen. And while you don't have all of the millions of dollars to do that, you can do that just with your own narration and conversation about what happens, with just a subtle attitude shift in your voice. Here's the last.
Let me read this one because I've been trying to. Daggerheart, like we've mentioned,
this is from Daggerheart.
In our Daggerheart, has really good, in my opinion, really good just general GM advice. It's one of my favorite sections. It puts a lot of effort into specific mechanics of how to run the game, but also like general philosophical principles, mindset shifts, if you will, for how to run your game. And this is a good little bit. Be a fan of your character and their journey. Find ways to show off what your character does best and what they do worst. Strive to make interesting choices and learn more about who they are through play. Push your character's story forward and let them grow within the fiction. This takes Apocalypse World and Dungeon World like a little step further. And there's a few things in here that are not in the first two that I think are interesting, but a little bit more difficult.
What we have here is two things that I think work really well for most systems, which is first, show off characters what they do best and what they do worst. Notice this is not really against the Apocalypse World advice of like taking away what they do best. It's like, hey, occasionally it's fun to put them in situations where we're going to see the flaws of their character. I think of a great scene in the TV show Firefly by Josh Whedon. And there's a great scene where there's a pilot character and an engineer character. One runs the engine, the other flies a spaceship, and they're both very good at what they do. And then they're switched to opposite ends. One's in the engineering room, another is in the control station. and they're they're in the place where their character is at what they do worst, right? And so we get to see the challenge of them trying to do something that's outside of their pond. I think the opposite side of showing off what they do best is if you have a character who is a ranger who has a bow who wants to shoot 100 orcs a day. Well, it's pretty easy to give them that scene, right?
This is something that you want to use carefully because it is frustrating sometimes for players to be stuck doing something they're not good at. But it can be very fun and interesting to put them in, like, arrange a situation where your dumbest, worst talking character has to do has to charm an emissary or has to talk their way past a guard. It might not work. It'll be interesting. It won't be boring.
It will be interesting. It'll be not boring, right? Because the outcome is, somehow through player character or cleverness or in character luck, they do succeed. That's not boring.
That's right.
Or they fail and then they have to fall back on what they're good at, maybe cleaving this guard in two that they were trying to, were originally going to, and then they say, fuck, well, I guess we're doing it this way now.
I mean, there's a bunch of funny examples of this. Like a great one is in Star Wars A New Hope when Han Solo is trying to talk to the guard and convince him that nothing has happened, and he ends up just shooting the command console. Tremendous character moment, something we all remember, we love. Another good one is in Inglourious Bastards.
Just like this podcast, boring conversation anyway.
When Brad Pitt's character is pretending to speak Italian and doing a really bad job of it, but buongiorno. It works really well because of the context of the scene. It's very funny. Yeah. So do this. Put your meaty, beefy characters in a talky situation. Put your weak, talky. Make your wizard fight in a bare knuckle boxing match. Like this can be really entertaining, and there's a lot of this one paragraph from Daggerheart has a bunch of like interesting stuff in it. I like the second sentence, strive to make interesting choices and learn more about who they are through play. This is, so I'm gonna say, I don't think it's controversial, but I'm gonna walk with you, Matt. Come with me on a journey. Yes, I feel like what one thing that the actual plays do really well is they set their players up, their actors up for long, elaborate, interesting character arcs, and this is cool. People like to watch it. It models a narrative from a television show or a book or a movie very well. I think this has set a unrealistic expectation for players and GMs in home games, especially because this is very hard to achieve without a lot of time, energy, and collaboration that having a paid professional cast and regular setup allows. So when
it's hard to achieve in a lot of systems,
and also in a lot of systems, precisely. And so one thing that I think you should not do is expect to be able to achieve similar outcomes in your own games. What I think that you and your players should work toward is seeing what emerges from play and developing your characters through that. And this is both at the table, just responding to what happens, but also talking about it afterwards or collaborating and saying, this is what I would like to see my character work toward. But make sure to set realistic expectations about this.
Let's take an example of the most basic and commonly encountered way to use and deploy this advice, right? It says, right, find out who they are in play. And if you're playing, let's say, your first or maybe 10th campaign, you may find a player character through the sort of desires and power fantasies of their player that is just like incredibly greedy, right? Greedy in terms of in-game money or power or powerful items or spells or technology. Perfect. You have found out that this player character, through play, even if they didn't put this in their backstory, is incredibly greedy. It's super easy to give them an interesting choice between increasing their wealth or power and some other consequence of the story. Aligning with overall party goals, aligning with another character specific goals, betraying the party, and see how that interesting choice plays out. Right? This is something
Yes.
we've all encountered a greedy player or character. How do you implement this advice? And then whatever choice they make, it's very easy to be a fan of that choice, right? Oh no, this bastard did this like betrayal of these overall goals. Will there be a chance for redemption? Is it too late? Or did they make the hard choice and grow and change?
Yes, exactly. And this is something you can establish before the campaign or during the campaign. And one thing that I wanted to talk about with being a fan of your players is some more like general advice, which is to listen. And I apologize because it's going to sound kind of like cheesy, but unfortunately, being a good game master, just like being a good friend or a good teacher or a good coach or anything, means you do have to pay attention to what people are telling you, and you have to listen when they tell you something. That doesn't mean that you have to do everything that they want, but you have to listen and understand. Right. And this is a skill that
it's Na'vi rules. I see you. I hear you.
That's right. I mean, Steve Jigsaw. Again, not to be cheesy, but like this is what people want out of most social interactions, but especially out of these games, is they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to feel like they have agency within the game, and that means that you need to hear what they're telling you. You may then say, that's not going to work, but so on and so forth. But this is good practice for you, and this is a skill that can be learned. And the better that you are at this, the less likely you are to run into table problems down the line. And getting in the habit of listening and talking through these things early will save you a lot of grief in the future.
Right. And so, like, this is not something that a system like 5th edition helps you with, but it is something that, like, a system, at least of campaign and character construction, like Daggerheart, will help you with. It won't give you the world's most complicated character story. So, like the final line, push your character's story forward and let them grow with the fiction. But it will give you, and many other systems do this as well, at least one or two sort of character goals or beats that they are telling you they would like to have happen in the campaign. If you can focus on, like, again, just being realistic here, right? As Rob was saying, right? If you have 6 characters at your table, right? Finding one interesting beat per like 3 months for each of them is probably like pretty good. And if you can make sure that every character has one of those like story things, then you're doing a good job of being a fan of their story.
Well, and to think about and talk about systems, there's some systems do a better job of helping you design sessions, scenarios, campaigns that give everybody a chance to shine. And this is actually, to me, kind of interesting because 5e currently doesn't do a very good job of helping you with this. But I think counterintuitively, early Dungeons and Dragons was built, every dungeon was constrained but also specific in such a way that there was fighting, there was a bunch of trap nonsense that only your rogue could deal with, only your cleric could heal, and only your wizard could do wizard things. And so your basic roles in a general dungeon would always have a chance to feel cool. They would always, have a specific moment to shine. And there are other reasons why that is sort of frustrating and moved away from it. But in the
Right, it's very simple. It's like this is classic any role-playing game or video game dungeon design. Here's a creature that needs to be frightened or polymorphed.
Yes.
Therefore, we want a warlock or a wizard in the
yes.
dungeon party. And then, while that's cheesy, you just kind of you made one thing that you need this one specific shape to
That's
do
right.
it. But
That's exactly what it is. You're putting shapes in the right holes, and there's a certain level of satisfaction to that. But in a role playing game, it's limited. It's cheesy and kind of narrow. But the good thing about that is everybody gets to feel useful. To bring it back to Mothership and the Warden's Guide, when you're designing a session or a campaign, it has a little section. What does each of the 4 character classes, what do they want to get out of this? Where are the cool weapons for the Marines, or the chance for them to shoot a bunch of bugs? Where's the scientist's opportunity to do science? Where's the android's chance to talk to a computer? Where's the teamster's chance to fix something? This is Mothership is a simple system, so it's easy to do that. But thinking about, that's sort of like the micro level, right? Each individual session, does somebody get to do something cool? Blow that up to like a macro level. What does this player's character want to accomplish through the campaign, and how do I write the campaign so that they get to feel cool and interesting on a broader scale?
Instead, you can take this based on mechanical roles, and then like the next easy to implement step is where you have your like player character descriptions, and they're like, these are my one story goal. Okay, this character, right, wants a confrontation with their former blade master who taught them everything they know, but now is working for the bad guy. We can easily add that to the story. This character doesn't have something as specific as that, but they want a chance to become the most powerful spellcaster in the kingdom. Let's put something in there along those lines, right? As opposed to a mechanical thing with magic, a story thing with magic. A mechanical thing with traps, a story thing with traps.
Right. That's a great way to think about it.
Okay, so we've read some advice from Mothership, Daggerheart, Dungeon World, and Apocalypse World. Let's just get down to like what are our like specific tips and tricks, and then I think at the end I have a systematic way of thinking about being a fan of the player characters that you can apply at many different spatial temporal scales.
Love that. Okay, let's go through it.
I think the first one is like, how do you set, is very simple. Set your players up for success, right? If you have a character who is a superhero speedster, right? Give them chances in the next encounter where someone needs to go fast, right? To pick up all the civilians in the way, or to outrace and defuse a bomb that only they can do. It's super simple. Yeah. Set them up for success.
Give them opportunities to do what they do well. This goes back to some of our previous advice, and succeed. Let them succeed, or let them try to succeed. This is And
then I think the important like flip side to setting them up for success is that advice we originally read from Apocalypse World is that if you don't follow through on showing the consequences of that success, you're not truly being a fan of those characters, because they're never going to see it. They're not going to feel like the camera of this story we're telling showed their success and was being a fan of what they did.
There's also there's a big picture holistic version of this, like that means making sure that the idea that they have is a good fit for the system and for the campaign, right? If they want to become a dashing and wealthy ship captain in Mothership, you may want to discourage that, because they're probably going to die. If they want to, if they want to do a lot of really interesting and dynamic, cool combat moves in something like 5e, you may also want to discourage that because it's not like the best system for that. Here's a specific example for me. Like, if I have players that want to be either lady killers or what's the female version of a lady killer? Man.
Oh, sorry. I was
Man-eater?
just thinking about the Coen Brothers film Lady Killers with the remake.
But like if
of
they want to flirt with all the ladies, like I'll flirt with my players, fine, no
Yeah.
problem. I'm comfortable with that. But like if they
Gentlemen
want to have
killers?
a full on, if they want to have a full on like romance with an NPC, I'm gonna be like, that's probably not gonna be very satisfying for you because I don't think that's very fun or interesting, and so I'm not gonna like put my whole energy into it. But if you want to.
Are you saying you're bad at flirting at the table?
Oh,
Is
I'm
that
great
what
at
this is
great
about?
at flirting, Matt. It's just sealing the
You
deal.
are,
I'm not so good
Okay,
at.
yeah. You are.
I'm just saying, like, something that I enjoy more is,
Yeah.
But I am not all that interested in. You're gonna marry the local countess, and we're gonna role play that whole thing out. I would be like, if that's what you want for your character, I'm not going to be able to deliver that as well for you. This is
Right,
a
but if you
specific
want to
example for
do
me.
the part I'm good at, or Rob's good at, the flirting part,
right.
let's go.
You might also be, this is a personal example. There might be other things that you're better at where you're like, well, I'm not all that interested in political intrigue. So if you are really hoping to be like a Littlefinger character in this game, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that for you. But if you want big smashy action, or you want to, have a sort of smaller scale version of that, I can achieve that. That's just what I mean by setting them up for success. This means knowing yourself and like knowing what your players want, but setting expectations is important when people come to your games.
Yeah. I think related to what you were saying about like what they want, right, is helping them sort of build characters that have the potential for some sort of not boring like story
That's
beat,
right.
something that can grow, right? Figure out what they don't have that they want to accomplish, right? And then it's easy to build opportunities for that. If for example, let's say it's not Mothership, but another sci-fi game like Traveler, and they want their character to be Han Solo or Han
Han Solo.
Solo, depending on whether you're
Dash
from
Rendar.
Dash Rendar, even.
Timu Han Solo.
He really is. Then maybe help them create a character that is not Han Solo yet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Help them create a character.
Could grow into that. Yes.
Exactly. Who starts off as just a criminal scumbag. Similarly, if they want to be the world's most powerful wizard, consider help when they make that character. What are they not good at yet? Right? What is their opportunity for growth? What do they still lack to become that? And then you can put those like opportunities to be a fan when they do grow or change or fail into your scenarios.
Yeah. This is one thing that I have found in a lot of my games that happens, especially with new role players, is they don't often have an answer to this question. And I think this
That's
is
fine.
a great opportunity for you and for them. And because they'll come to the table with a vague character idea, but they won't have thought. They might not have thought through the backstory, and they probably haven't thought through the development. And this is a great opportunity to encourage them, ask them, what stories do you like? What characters are you interested in? What sort of outcome would you like to see for this character? And this can be sort of like hard to draw out. People don't always know, but it's fun to me. And often they'll come up with, oh, well, I do like Han Solo. I think it would be cool if I had like a Han Solo character. And then you can build from there.
The other flip side is if they can't answer that question, you can still help them build characters that can grow by figuring out what their character is through those first 10 sessions of play or 2 sessions of play, right? Just, hey, they didn't have an answer, but I'm going to make sure I kind of know the answer after observing and interacting with their character for those first couple sessions. Like, hey, let's figure out who you are if you don't know right now.
I mean, I personally, as a player in role-playing games of all time, or of all kinds, what I love is the emergent nature of it. What happens through the dice rolls, what happens through the random chance. And I like to build characters that are flexible so that I can see and they will grow and change according to that. I would describe that as maybe a more advanced approach, but I think that's a lot of fun, and you can encourage that by, like Matt said, making a character that has the potential to grow and change in response to what's happening around them. And all of these strategies just mean talking and planning, and it doesn't have to be a lot, just like making sure that you understand what's going into the character and the campaign and setting your players' expectations reasonably.
Yeah. I think my next specific piece of advice is two related pieces of meta advice, right? Like how you're managing the table and how you as a person are behaving when you're playing the game, which is like, okay, in order to be a fan of the characters, you have to give them like ample spotlight time, initiative time to and space to talk and try and plan and scheme and role play to do the things that you want to do. So you got to like make sure you're not just like dumping information constantly on your characters, that they are getting the spotlight time. So like managing the spotlight before you get to this advice is essential.
This is also a matter, we've talked about this before, of table management. And this is a hard one sometimes, but a very simple thing that you can do as a game master that helps you be a fan of your players, but that also elevates your play is just keeping track of how much time at the table each player is taking up. It will be obvious if somebody is monopolizing time, but just pay attention. You can even, like, if you want to, like, make tick marks or something, just, every time somebody talks. But like, it doesn't even have to be that much. Just get in the habit of asking each person from time to time, Tim, what does your character want to do? Like, Sally, what does your character want to do? It doesn't have to be a lot. Just remember to check in with everybody periodically. Some people don't want to spend that much time talking. Some people don't want to be in the spotlight, but give them the opportunity periodically.
The other like meta thing you can think about is what I think of as just an attitude lie, a cheat. We're not fans of the game master cheating, but we are fans of the greatest lie of all time, which is something called acting.
Acting.
When you're acting, that's not actually like your attitude. And I mean, we do this all the time. Anyone who has a job knows all about emotional labor, right?
Emotional labor.
And we, there was a discourse like 8 years ago about how this is an incredibly bad thing. And sure, it is when you're working a shitty job that you don't want. But
it's bad when it's tied to like your ability to make a living for yourself. But it isn't inherently bad to adjust your attitude to meet the needs of the situation. This is something we do all the time.
It's called society.
As people.
Being a friend.
It's called living in a society.
Being a human. Being a
Matt,
human
did you
being,
know we
right?
live in a society?
We do live it. So you are probably a game master partially because you're a little bit of a fan of like improv and acting and drama and something like that. And no DM worth their salt can't do this even a little bit. And the great thing about this attitude lie or attitude cheat is it's not even really full like acting. You don't have to put on a Shakespearean accent and talk in a different type of prose to represent this NPC. I'm talking about the acting that you do as the game master. If this isn't making sense, here's a quick example. You've come up with a scenario that you've written out a couple of ways that players might possibly overcome it. And when your characters come up with a cool plan to overcome it, that's maybe actually pretty similar to one of the things that you expected. You can be like, oh, no way. It doesn't look like you roll that dice. Oh, it doesn't look like they saw that coming at all. You have them at this like incredible advantage. Wow, guys and gals. And that was so cool. Okay, I'm doing a bad job with my acting here. It sounds really fake. But when you're at the table, it's very easy to be impressed with what your players decided to do.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to come off as like
No.
patronizing or condescending. But like, if they do something cool, let yourself be excited about that. Be like,
Yes.
wow, that was a really cool idea. Like, even if it is something that you did consider, I don't know. I get excited when my players come up with a good idea, whether or not I considered it or not. And like, there may be like a part of you that wants to remain impartial. Don't do that. Just be like, that was awesome. Great idea, guys. Use this, I think, generously. If they do something that you think is even like a teensy bit cool, just tell them. Tell them that was cool. Great idea, guys. That was awesome. That was epic. High fives. There's no downside to this, and it doesn't like hurt your ability to be a game master. It doesn't like pull back the veil and like ruin everyone's, verisimilitude if you say that was cool. Good job, guys. Like just tell them that.
And even if you're one of those game masters who's like, I am absolutely always a neutral arbiter of the rules, fine, right? This is not the rules. This is your own personal attitude about what has happened at the table. It's just saying you did something cool. Wow, that was that was really interesting. Here, now let me show you how interesting that was, right? If you combine those two together, everything is more powerful. And honestly, this like works in the flip side. The players come up with a really bad approach, a bad plan of action, a terrible luck roll. You can be devastated along with your players. Attitudes are infectious. You laugh more at a movie when you're at a theater and everyone else is laughing. If you're like, oh, fuck, y'all are fucked, this creates the tension.
This is what makes this is why we roll dice, right? This is why we roll dice in the open, because it means that if they fuck up, if they biff their roll, if like something happens, you can share in that like dismay and like be like, I'm sorry, guys, this is bad news and here's why. You can do that. You don't need dice to do that, but that's part of like, I think what I love about this hobby and playing games this way is like you're sharing in the ups and downs that is dictated by the randomness, the mechanics, and that means that it's easier for you to share in their victories and in their disappointments.
Yeah. I think related to this is making sure your player characters have the space to allow you and the other people at the table to be a fan of what that character just did. Yes, you just defeated the cyborg bounty hunter that's been after your party for 3 sessions. If you immediately move the spotlight on and don't give that character space to like see the consequences of their actions, the defeat of this enemy, then no one will have a chance to be a fan of that character journey. Likewise, if they're not good at this, it's okay to give them a little bit of coaching. You're standing over the smoldering pile of circuitry and bio implants. One eye is still moving on this bounty hunter, focusing for the last time on you. What's happening, right? Give them the chance to give those epic lines that everyone will stand.
This is a great piece of advice, because sometimes something huge will happen, right? You took down the big bad, you threaded the needle in your spaceship, like you pulled off a great pilot roll, and you want to give your players a chance to feel cool in that moment, to be a fan of them, and they may not pick up what you're putting down, but like Matt said, you can just give them a little prompt. Yeah, like, something, here's the situation. Like, what do you want to say? What do you want to do? And they still might not, but like give them an opportunity to, even if they need a little help, give them a chance to feel cool, to do something interesting.
I think my like final tip and trick, or next to final maybe, is you can kind of always find something to stan. Like, I think the default assumption here is the character is a big damn hero or someone dramatic protagonist going on an interesting journey. Like, I think it's pretty easy to be a fan of characters who are also just kind of pieces of shit. It's like, oh wow, what you did, that was really awful, and it's gonna have some consequences. We're being a fan of this like less savory part of your journey, and then that will give them, by seeing those consequences, that player character will have the opportunity to, I want to continue on this because I liked this sort of feedback loop, or no, I want to change it because I want a different feedback loop, right? If you ignore someone being like really awful, not like awful in the like meta way where they're actually like purposefully derailing your game, right? We're setting that aside, but it's like, oh, their player character did something that seems really unsavory. Well, we can find a chance to be a fan in the anti-hero way, in the way that's like, I can't believe Tony just murdered another one of his friends. Let's enjoy that awful moment.
This is a great example, and there was there's a period in the, I think, 2010s where we had an awful lot of these guys. Your Walter Whites, your Frank Cards, and I think people took the wrong lessons from some of those. But the right lesson is that even like objectively awful people, Tony Soprano is much better. Lesson. Like the Robin. Nice. Tony Soprano is a better example because he is really awful, but like, you still are kind of like rooting for him, and to use like Game of Thrones is an even easier one. There are a lot of really awful people in Game of Thrones, but like, they're compelling sometimes even when they're being awful. And this is hard to do, but you can find something that's interesting or compelling about them when they're being awful. And that's a good point to make, is this doesn't mean your players have to be big damn heroes all the time, shining examples. There's something to be a fan of even when they are maybe doing unsavory things.
And I guess the actual last piece of tips and tricks is go anti-meta, right? Give them in-world diegetic fans of the characters, right?
Yeah.
If
this
they're
one's
doing,
easy and fun.
It's so fun. It's so fun to have a group of people or a single person who's like comes up in world and is like, wow, you are great. And it can also be a great opportunity to create more spiraling consequences for the player's character.
This is a really fun one. Give them fans. Yeah, give them some people who just think they're so cool. And you can make this as relevant or not. It can literally just be something that you throw in to make them feel cool, or it can tie into the narrative, and maybe they have to go rescue their fans because they did something stupid trying to emulate their heroes. This is a common trope, and honestly one that I think is delightful. So, but yeah, this is an easy way to make them feel cool and be a fan of their characters, is to in world have NPCs that love them, either in any number of ways, think they're cool, look up to them.
All right. Any other tips and tricks before we move to our conclusion and a brief way to think about being a fan of your player characters, Rob?
No, I think this is like we said at the beginning, a whole mindset shift. It's a whole way of playing games. So it's hard to boil it down to just a list, but I think this covers a lot of the things that you want to be thinking about when you're trying to be a fan.
Okay. So I think
let's see our system. Let's systematize it.
If you want to make a checklist for yourself of how to be a fan of the player characters, start with the system you're using, right? Does the system have chances for like character growth and change? Does the system encourage this character to do some things really, really well? If so, you want to note them. Do they have any weaknesses, conversely? So, like, go through the system you're using and find those chances in that system to be fans of characters.
Yes. This is just an alignment between system, theme, and player intent. This is big picture advice, but I think it's important. Make sure that you're running the right type of game and the right type of system with the right type of players, because that's probably the easiest thing that you can do to make sure that they feel like they're having fun, like it's interesting, and you have an opportunity to be a fan of them. If your players are trying to be like a cool, like, two-handed gunslinger in Call of Cthulhu, they are probably not going to have a good time, and you are probably not going to be able to be a fan of their pistol-wielding Lovecraftian horror fighter. But that would work better in a different game.
Right. Or you can say maybe they're fully aware of how Call of Cthulhu works, and you give them, like some highwaymen that they can easily two-handed pistol and kill. And then when they're confronted with the eldritch entity, they're like, well, this is useless here. But at least I showed I was a cowboy hunting Yog-Sothoth.
As a bad example, actually. That would be cool. But you know what I mean.
Yeah. Campaign. Next, think about like how you're structuring your campaign. Does your campaign have opportunities for, character growth? Do you have spots? If your campaign is so like on like campaign plot goals driven, that's fine, but like make sure that there's wiggle room for each of the characters to have fan moments in those things, again, for good or ill. So system, campaign, adventure arc, think of like in terms of 2 or 3 sessions, right? Is there an opportunity for characters to be pushed and not boring in this particular adventure arc? Sort of the same way you want to think about the campaign, just at a smaller scale, and like, hey, I need to make sure there's frequency for every character in this one arc to have a chance for everyone to be a fan.
Yeah, and this is where you want to know what your players are looking for. But this is theoretically the idea behind something like the 3 pillars of play in D&D. If you have exploration, combat, and social encounters, then you're covering something for everybody. But that's not quite enough. But it's a good way to think about it. I've jumped ahead. I'm sorry, I've jumped ahead in your framework.
Yeah.
Let's get to the end of the framework.
Well,
but
the next one. Okay, so system, campaign, adventure session, right? Just hey,
yes.
Is there an opportunity in this session? Where are the points that I want to prepare for as we're getting into tonight's play, for celebrating character success or failure?
Precisely, and this is I think the cool thing about this. Like, we're talking about how to be a fan of your players, so we're talking about how to make sure your players are having fun. But this, I think, makes you a better designer, a better GM, because you're designing a more complex, more interesting game, campaign, session, etc. Because and this is a useful tool, because you're like, well, what does everybody want? How do I include all of those things in my session, adventure, campaign, etc.? You don't have to start from scratch there. You have a sort of like guideline that helps you create a more complex and interesting and dynamic game.
Absolutely. And then the last scale is just think about it moment to moment, right? How can I be a fan of this particular move the player did, this particular action, this decision, or even this dice roll, right? How can I celebrate the success or failure of this one moment that happened at our table? Think about like how to be present in that sort of emotional labor of the moment.
Well, and this ties back to our Dungeon World advice: cheer for their victories and lament their defeats. That means that moment to moment, when they do something cool, that's cool. Tell them, like, make them feel cool. Tell them it's cool. When they biff it, when they fuck up big time, let them know. Make that. Say, that sucks. Here's what happens. But be like Matt said, be present. Make each moment feel important.
So I started from longest to shortest system, campaign, adventure, session, moment. In terms of easiest to implement, work your way back up, right? Start with the moments, move to tonight's session, and then when you feel like, if you haven't ever tried this before, move to those bigger picture things afterwards.
This is how I do it. I make sure that moments and sessions are planned for. Everybody has something to enjoy, and then to me, it feels very natural to build up from there. One thing flows to the next. If you're thinking about sessions, then you can easily think about the arc. You can easily think about the campaign. But if you have the session handled, I think the rest will be a lot easier to implement.
And there you go. Your games will be better, especially for games that specifically give you this advice to be a fan of the player characters. The last advice, I guess, that I have to end the episode with us is naturally your attitude and the way you're setting this up should be infectious to the whole table. But, encourage your players to be fans of their own characters. This should happen naturally because of your attitude, inculcating this around your table, but you also should encourage your players to be a fan of their particular character and of each other's, right? Encourage them to celebrate all of these things communally, because often the success you're celebrating is the whole tables. It should flow. Everyone is a fan of everyone else. All right, everyone, thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of Dungeon Master of None, you can head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Dungeon Master of None. If you have any tips or tricks for being a fan of your players, be sure to drop us a line at dmofnone@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And whatever you do, keep rolling them dice.
I am Dungeon Master.
You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice.